Hello everybody, thank you for joining the first Kingston Teaching and Learning Network event. My name's Gabby Veglio and I'm one of the assistant head teachers at the Kingston Academy. Again, just before I forget, I'm going to post a form into the chat. I hope you can see that. In fact, someone's just joined, so I'm going to post it again. Because I'll definitely forget at the end. That's the evaluation form that Rachel or Morgan has set up for you to add any comments at the end of the session if you'd like to. So that link is in there now. Okay, so we'll get started. Something that we at the Kingston Academy have spent a lot of time on exploring over the last few years is assessment and feedback. And often the research and the conversations always bring me back to the question, well, what's the purpose of assessment? Do we want a score or a grade to sort of snapshot the attainment level of each pupil at that particular time, which is then sort of recorded and fixed? Or do we want to make it, assessment a tool to allow students to improve and make progress? So in one of the books I've read, formative assessment and summative assessment were compared to coaching and a fitness examination. And I like this analogy because I think it clarified for me that in general, when we talk about formative assessment, it's that coaching bit where we're quickly picking up on missing skills or prompting that higher, better performance by really quickly offering advice and allowing pupils to try it there and then. Whereas our more summative assessments, they're also great for, allowing an opportunity for feedback and improvement, but we also do use those bigger tests and exams which cover a bigger range of knowledge and skills, probably from over a longer period of time. We use those assessments to commit a grade or a score to probably a spreadsheet or a report, which can feel like a rather closed process and can sometimes have a negative impact on some students, like fixed mindsets. So one of the books that we've read together here at the Kingston Academy is Dylan Williams' book, Embedded Formative Assessment. And he says the phrase, "You can't fatten a pig by weighing it." And I love that phrase because I think if we only ever use summative assessments, and certainly if we didn't use them to provide those opportunities for improvement, then assessment would never be beneficial to learning. It would just be that fixed snapshot of knowledge or memory, which pupils can sometimes react emotionally to, rather than using it as a tool to make progress. And for teachers to then use and plan from in response. So I completely agree with Dylan's phrase, assessment is the bridge between teaching and learning. And I highly recommend that book, which you can see in the bottom corner of the screen now, if you haven't already read it. So for the rest of this session, I'm going to concentrate on formative assessment strategies that we can use throughout lessons to make an instant impact on pupil progress. But first, I'm going to pause for 30 seconds for you to list as many AFL, assessment for learning strategies, as you can. Perhaps think of strategies that you've used in your lessons today. And then afterwards, I'm going to run through 10 of my favourite AFL strategies. Okay. So I wonder if you wrote down any of the ones that I'm about to go through. I know that wasn't very much time, but we'll see. Okay, so the first one that I have said is questioning. I think that we know that it's crucial to ask lots of questions to gauge whether our pupils understand something. And as we sort of scaffold our questioning, we can find out to exactly what depth they've understood it. I don't know if you've seen or heard of Alex Quigley, but he writes about the ABC technique, which I'm sure is sometimes referred to by other names, a bit like pose, pause, pounce, bounce. But once the teacher asks a question, they then bounce the question or build on the question with another pupil and then another, and then it can lead to some interesting discussion or debate, as well as actually finding out whether several people in the room have actually understood the concept or not. It's always necessary to be careful, though, to get a true sample from the class. And you could practice a no hands up culture to avoid being distracted by those students who are always keen to volunteer answers. I always find it interesting when choosing questioning as a focus for observations, and sometimes we just don't realise whether we're always picking volunteers or other groups of pupils, like girls or boys or whatever. So yeah, questioning is always a really interesting one. Low stakes quizzing. I've realised I'm going to have to speed up a little bit through these. Quizzing demands recall, and so that revisiting of skills or knowledge over time actually leads to long-term memory. So as well as assessing the pupils and what they can remember, the actual process of quizzing is really helpful to their learning as well. But it's got to be low stakes so that pupils are encouraged to make those mistakes and, try something and take a risk, so that they actually do learn from this. Mini whiteboards, these are a really clear way to determine whether your class are able to recall knowledge or skills, but perhaps they lend themselves best to sort of quick fire questions to test facts. I'm a maths teacher and we certainly use them a lot in maths. And then our usual routine is that we will ask pupils to hide their whiteboards. Then when we count 3, 2, 1, they then all show them at the same time so that you can prevent any sort of copying. But also, as well as that assessment from the front, I think that mini whiteboards can often help assess pupils as you move around the room, because I think sometimes, depending on your group, pupils are a little bit reluctant to sort of try out things in their book if they think it could be wrong. They want to keep their book looking, neat and accurate anyway. So they might take more risks, and we might actually be able to see more from them and assess more from them if they're just able to use mini whiteboards next to their books during some lessons. Multiple choice tasks, I think these are really powerful assessment techniques by offering other possible misconceptions in the choices. You can find out whether pupils know the content properly or not, but therefore it's really crucial that within each question you're only testing for one specific skill so that you can actually diagnose exactly what that misconception is that they've got there. Exit tickets are really popular for us at TKA. We only have 50-minute lessons, so sometimes at the end we like to just ask a couple of questions on a green post-it note or even a printed version like the one you can see in front of you to assess the learning from that lesson. Visualizers, I think, are a great tool to assess work and do some live marking in the lesson. And I'm going to skim through the last few examples as well. Success criteria is really crucial so that pupils can assess themselves against that at the end of the task or during the task. A marking grid. If you are lucky enough to have a teaching assistant in some of your lessons, I have found it really helpful to just quickly draw up a table a bit like this with some key priority pupils that you want them to assess during the lesson, which is really helpful to direct the teaching assistant and then get some more detailed assessment information of those pupils at the end of the lesson. Post-it summaries, so asking pupils what they learned in that lesson or what they'd like to do more of next lesson. I know it could be argued perhaps that these are not necessarily assessment strictly because it's not testing a particular skill or knowledge, but sometimes you can get some interesting feedback from those self-assessments or reflections. And then the last one is carousel marking, where each member of the class has produced the same piece of work, and then they pass their work clockwise around the room. Each pupil will then read that piece of work and make comments. So it could be what went well in EBI comments, or it could be specific comments linking to some shared success criteria. And then we as the teacher can get involved as well, handing round some model answers for students to see and adding comments to some students' work. And then everyone has the chance to reproduce that task, making the improvements from the comments. So sorry, I've just run over time, but I hope that was a helpful snapshot of some assessment for learning strategies and my thoughts about assessment. So thank you for joining me.